go. Yeah, it's like it's one of the places, but we might.
Inspiration for everyone who has a 308. Please don't just keep it in your garage. You know, don't just. Hello everybody, welcome to number 27 from me, Jack, and from the not at all troublesome Influenzo. This is a car I bought cheap at auction just before the first lockdown, and I've been working on it ever since. I did get it running, but now it's in bits again because I found that the front head on the engine was cracked. So I need to extract it, and I have had loads of problems. See the previous video. Now, let's go back to it. So this is the puller that I've been using that was kindly lent to me by QV in London. I stupidly cut the old bolts off it because I thought I wouldn't be able to take it off, and then the head hasn't moved since. So I've got to reuse it, but I need some shorter bolts to be able to put it in situ. I ordered some bolts and they sent me some shouldered ones, which is extremely frustrating because I was waiting a couple of days and obviously I can't use these. But I'm going to use one of these bolts just to show you the difficulties that I have with this puller, and that is that at travel, when they're long, there's quite a lot of slack in there. Now, the bolts would actually be going down this way, the new bolts, and not with the head obviously, but with the tip of the bolt, which is now being screwed in, would come down and push on those studs. Problem is, that's quite a bit of movement. There's no way, there's no holes on here to be able to tell if you're actually hitting the stud or hitting something else. So that's a slight worry, and it's just going to require a lot of fiddling and a lot of sort of feeling once I've got the new bolts in to try and make sure that they are pressing on the studs when I try and do this again. Okay, it's moving really nicely again, which is great news. One of the things which is a bit worrying is obviously these bolts are about 20 mil shorter than the ones that the puller came with, so they're not going to push the head all the way off. They're just going to get it a bit further down. The good thing is I can feel that all the bolts are now going through the actual block, so the studs have gone so far in that the bolts are going straight through. So I know they're not veering off to the side or anything like that. So that's great because it means that you can, I can sort of nip them up without having to worry whether they're going down straight or at an angle. And every time you nip some of them up, some of the others move. So the whole thing is moving now, which is great. I have to say, if I had the space, or if you have the space, take the engine out. It is a horrible job to do in situ. It's not nice at all. Well, I managed to completely bugger up my back a few days ago, so I haven't been able to do much here. But as you can see, the head is now well and truly off, and I had a genius idea. This is a pad spreader, which I wasn't able to put in there before because it was too narrow, and now I'm using this to gradually push up its side. It seems to be working a treat, and it is just perfect for this. It slots in just on the side. Well, I finally won! I am so pleased that I managed to get that head off. It's such a relief. And we're going to take it now to QV in London first of all, because I've got to give them back the tools that they lent me, but also just to get Mick to have a quick look over it, make sure that everything's okay before we do anything else with it. Then after that, I'm going to take it down to EMP and I'm going to get them to do the welding. Obviously, they won't be able to do it today, but we'll have a look around. I'll show you the laser welding machine and so on. And I am going in my neighbour's car, so thank you very much, Rooksy. Very nice of her to lend me this, but believe it or not, I have 4 cars and I can't use a single one at the moment. The Sprite would be a little bit of a pain on a journey this long without a hood and all the rest of it, because it's going to be about sort of 4 or 5 hour round trip, I think. The Alpha is still getting work done, still hasn't been finished. It wasn't a lot of work, but because of one thing and another, it's just taken a lot longer than it should have. The Ferrari we know about, and the Lotus as well. So I've got a Seat Alhambra. So next stop is QV in London. I'll get them to check the head, make sure that everything is fine with that before we go any further, that there isn't any problem with any of the valves or anything like that. Hopefully we won't have to muck around with anything, and I can take it straight to EMP to get the welding done. Just left QV and Mick's given it a clean bill of health, so everything looks all right, that you can tell from just looking at the exterior and without disassembling valves and so on, but there's no telltale signs of any problem with it, so that's great news. I also asked him about the tensioner bearings, because I'm pretty sure they were changed the last time the belts were done, which was only about 1.5 years ago, so I'm not going to replace those when I do the belts. And I've spoken to Phil there about a few bits that they'll be helping me source, so that's all pretty good. So now heading down to EMP to drop off the head and get it fixed, and then after that it's just reassembly, which I have to tell you, part of me is just dreading, because it feels like I've taken so many bits off that car that putting it all back together is going to be a bit of a puzzle. I'm here at EMP Tooling Services. It's a bit noisy, so apologies for that, but I've just been in there. Alan's shown me a few things on my particular head, so he's actually outlined the edges of the crack using the laser, which was quite fascinating to see. And he's done a couple of demos for me, and this laser welding stuff really is just incredible. It only heats the very area that it's welding, so it doesn't heat up the surrounding areas. It's really, really trick stuff, and it was just incredible to see it. There's an engine block in particular where the piston had gone, or the crank had gone through the side, and you know, that would normally be scrap, and yet they are sorting that out. It's a Bristol block. Looks like a conrod has gone through, broken it right across here, cracked along the top sides, and you can see basically it's been laser welded. This is a sort of block that would have definitely been scrap, you know, some years ago, and yet it's been fixed. And just have a look at that close up. How perfect is that weld? You can hardly tell it apart. These are the ones that haven't been dressed yet and machined, so take no notice of those, but it's an incredible repair, and that's what we're going to be doing to my 308 head. There are a couple of issues with my own head, and that is that the crack seems to extend around under that oil gallery on the side, so it's going to be, they're going to have to pressure test it and see how far the leak itself actually goes before he can work out what he's going to do. It might be a bit more complicated than we first thought, but we'll wait and see. So the original crack is what we saw on my video, but it then turns and twists round the side as well. Anyway, time to get home. Well, it's almost 1 year ago that I sat in this very spot and decided on the spur of the moment, literally within 2 hours, to just bid on the Ferrari, and quite unexpectedly I actually won it. And it's quite crazy thinking back to those times and how much has happened. And I think one of the main questions one would ask is, well, do you regret it? Because obviously the Influenza has turned out to have quite a lot of problems, and the simple answer is no, I don't really regret it at all. I didn't buy it because I thought it was a good purchase. I got it because I thought it would be good for YouTube. It would make a good story, and I've always wanted one. So it would have made far more sense, of course, to spend 55,000 or 60,000 even on a really good 308, but that would have been so boring. So no, I don't regret it at all. I'm really happy. I mean, some of these issues, the cracked cylinder head, it's been a massive pain, but there's so much learning that goes along with it. And then there's so much incidental stuff, which is really good. So having gone to EMP and learning about laser welding, I would never have, sorry, I'd never have known about that if it wasn't for the Influenza. So, you know, I don't want it to continue after this. You know, once the cylinder head is done, I've got to find out why it isn't running quite as well as it should at the top end. But it's got to be fuel, it's got to be the carbs, or it's got to be the distributor. I mean, it's got to be electrical or fuel. Mechanically, the engine is fine. So that's good news. The other thing I wanted to say is that there is, throughout all this, especially since September, there's been an inspiration for me, and there's this guy on Instagram. His tagline is @Brian'sQuestionableDecisions, I think, and indeed, he's got a 308 GTSI, I think, and he's been travelling throughout the US. He's done 8,000 miles since September, and latterly his trip has taken him to Colorado. I mean, he's been all the way from Pennsylvania, he's been all over the place, but His trip has taken him to Colorado where he went skiing and he took his 308 on that, and it is just brilliant because I thought I was quite brave taking my car through, you know, a big sort of rainstorm and stuff. But Brian has taken his through snow, through desert, he's broken down twice, and he is really using it. Look at the state of this car. And it's just an inspiration for everyone who has a 308. Please don't just keep it in your garage. You know, don't just polish it up and look at the mileage. Use it. You get so much more pleasure from it. And yes, if it breaks down, well then you'll learn something, won't you? Because you'll have to fix it. Thank you all so much. Oh, one last thing that everybody has been asking me is, did I ever find the nut for the feeler gauge? And I have to admit, I haven't found it. Now, it can only be in one place. It can only be in that head that's been removed. But, sorry, I mean it can only be in two places, either on the floor somewhere or in that head. That head I have gone through, it's definitely not there. On top of which, it actually wasn't just a little nut. It had a big plastic sort of thumb screw thing on it. So it's not a tiny little nut that could have gone in any recess. I'm pretty sure it has gone on the floor and rolled somewhere in the garage. I will look some more, but those are the only places it could be really, so I'm not worried about it. But it was funny how many of you posted asking if I'd found it, so you're obviously a bit OCD like me. Thank you all for watching, as always. In the next one, hopefully I will be refitting that head, and then onwards and upwards. It feels like I've sort of hit a milestone now. In terms of getting it back together. It feels like months and months that it's been apart. I don't know how many months it's been, but it's been a while. Thank you very much for following. Please do subscribe. Please do follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you for the next video.